Hello, everyone. Welcome, College Confidence families. My name is Sonja Montiel, the founder of College Confidence, and I am so thrilled to have our guest and expert here, Dana Baker-Williams. She is the founder of Parenting in Real Life. Yes. And overall, she has a niche. She specializes in helping families understand and navigate ADHD and anxiety without losing their minds. Like so important. And I know the work that Dana, the work that you do, it's all families, whether you focus on the ADHD and anxiety, but I'm sure your tools and strategies are for all families.
Absolutely, because there's really not, there are extra tools and tips you can do for kids who are struggling with ADHD or anxiety or OCD, but all kids and all parents need some just regular guidance on life strategies and, self-advocacy and those types of things, right?
For sure. It's so awesome. I would love for you to share a little bit about your story on how did you come to specialize in working with families, and then perhaps maybe the ADHD and anxiety and OCD will come into play as well.
Yeah, well, so I had a whole different career before this, and it's kind of a interesting story. I was the editor-in-chief of Yahoo for 5 years, and I was traveling for that a lot. And I started to get sick. And eventually I had to come home and go on disability. So, which was terrible, but the upside on that is my daughter was in kindergarten. And when I picked her up from kindergarten the first day, her teacher said, "Oh, good, you're home now. Maybe the stomach aches will stop." Nobody had told me anything about stomach aches, so I had no idea what she's talking about. I'm like, what? So anyway, as time went on, I saw that Kylie had differences that, she'd have tantrums like any kid, right? But they were over things like a change of plans, or because she couldn't read even though she was 5, or because there were too many kids and she wanted a small play date. Then as she got a little older, we're talking first, second grade, I started asking the teachers to check her out because I thought she was really struggling. And they were like, no, she's great, which is why girls are often misdiagnosed or not diagnosed, by the way. It's because, right, they're quiet. They're taught how to handle themselves in a way that is different maybe than the boys sometimes. Anyway, so by like 4th grade, I said, no, something is seriously wrong. We'd had her in therapy. Nothing was working. She couldn't remember a phone number that she called every single morning for years. So I did get her diagnosed and assessed, and she had ADHD, anxiety, and depression. And it was so overwhelming for me. You get a 60-page paper or whatever it is, and it's overwhelming. And you're like, oh my God, my child will never be okay. And that's wrong, first of all, parents. But I just thought, I can't have everybody else go through this. There's got to be somewhere for us to go, because I could get her help, right? But there was nowhere for me to go. And you don't talk to your friends about your family dynamic that's kind of blowing up because everybody thinks something different, and we didn't know it was wrong. And she was working on the same homework that would take somebody else half an hour for 2 hours, so she'd have a meltdown. And it was hard. And she was great once we got her set up, CBT and some medicines. She's been thriving and is fabulous, but I was struggling. And I just felt, there's got to be a better way. We don't need to all recreate the wheel and struggle and feel so alone.
Well, Dana, thanks. Just the vulnerability and sharing your story. And thank you so much for saying that, because I think it does, perhaps there are families listening in, and it just goes to show the social constructs of what looks okay. And that it almost as if we're fighting our own instinct and intuitive sense.
Exactly.
Like, it's screaming. I'll have to say, particularly maybe our mom experience, like it screams out loud, yet the social constructs, and then I'm going to call them authorities, but our teachers will say, fine. The behavior is fine. Everything's fine.
Right. Even when someone's suggesting them to check it. And one of her teachers was a special ed teacher in her prior couple of years earlier. So it was really interesting that it can really just get hidden.
Right. And then it's almost like eureka. It sounded like it was like eureka. I knew it.
Oh my gosh, my daughter was so happy. She's like, I knew I'm not stupid. I'm like, I've been telling you that for years. right? But they internalize this. She knows her friends are working half this time, and that she's struggling with friendships too sometimes, and social things. And she was like, well, thank God I have a diagnosis, because now I can do something about it.
So when
I felt really bad for being so late to the party. I tried, but I was still late. And that was really hard for her.
Well, and really though, perhaps a silver lining, because some of us we wait much later too, is the advocacy. So as soon as it was released, it was this, I feel it, the sense of assertiveness and advocacy, not only for your own daughter and your family and you as a mom, but now for all families.
Everybody.
So tell me about, so you had that moment for you within yourself, and then you shifted over to finding parenting in real life.
Yes. So I just decided that was what I was going to do. I mean, it was morphed a little more than from A to B, but I just felt in my gut that I just needed to do that. And I wanted to help them. And the way I could help other parents or kids was to share what I went through and share everything that I've learned, both through my coaching and through living it, right?
Sure. Yep.
And just give them at least a sense of peace and of understanding that life isn't over as you know it. And somebody can be there to even the silly things like, what do I do next? Right? You're given this pamphlet, this information, and you go, what do I do with this? Do I talk to the teachers? How do I get in 504? What's an IEP? Like all these things, you don't know the first thing about it. Or, okay, I didn't know the first thing about it.
Right.
And so now I coach both parents and kids on those, what to do, how to do it, how they can handle all these different things, because the brain is different, right? So once you understand that the ADHD brain is different, it's much easier to adapt. And there are techniques you can get that help you parent more effectively. Because the same things don't work for someone with anxiety and ADHD as they necessarily do for a neurotypical person. Their motivation is different. What they respond to is different. And once you can, as a parent, if you can know that and change that, it's a relatively small shift for, a parent to be able to make. And it makes just a world of difference in the family and for your child. And that's just the beginning. That's handling you, not to mention them.
Yeah, I would imagine then for your families, they come to you. It would be a blessing if they came to you the first time they had that feeling before testing for, right? Like, I don't know if this is quite right, but I know that there's Dana out in the world that can help me navigate next steps towards even getting diagnosed.
You don't have to be diagnosed, Yeah, absolutely. Because for a lot of people, you do have this feeling for a while, right? They feel that something's wrong, but they may not have any idea what it is. So, or they may think it is ADHD. And often these things are comorbid with something else, right? So whether it's anxiety, ADHD, they look the same. And actually 35% of teens with ADHD have anxiety as well.
Okay.
So, and they do morph, right? And they kind of and depression too. So it is difficult to know what it is, but it isn't as difficult as a mom or a parent to know that something is off, I don't think. Right? You just feel it in your gut.
Yeah, right. So what do you, I'm thinking about the pandemic, and speaking of uncertainty and dealing with curveballs, what have you seen in terms of the most challenging needs that families are experiencing within this, I guess within the past year, but we're now transitioning back.
Which brings its own issues, honestly. So it's not as clear cut as we might have expected or we might think it will be. Certainly what I've seen over the last year and a half is a huge increase in anxiety, not just with the kids that have anxiety already, but everybody more or less, right? That seems normal. And those with anxiety, it's really heightened. And depending on whether they're in school or not in school, right? Are they live or not live? That made a big difference. So you can have someone with anxiety think, oh, it's much better to be on screen because I don't have to be live,
Right.
but then they have to have the picture on, and they have to stay focused and be able to talk on camera and things like that. So that's anxiety provoking. And now that they're going back to school, they haven't been in school. So that's anxiety provoking, because now they've finally gotten used to being home and, in their own little cocoon for a lot of them. And many of them like to work in their own bedroom, which I don't recommend.
Okay.
And things like that. So then it's harder for them to come out of that. Right. So I think re-entry into the world is also difficult. I think it's tough. And there's that anxiety of, is somebody vaccinated? Is somebody not vaccinated? Am I going to get sick? Do I have to wear a mask? Do I not? All of those things make, even if you are in school, it makes them different than what you were in school with, right? And something that looks different and feels different can cause anxiety. And the ADHD, oh my gosh. Yikes. I mean, that's been so tough, because it's hard enough to concentrate if you're in a class and the teacher's there and engaging. If you're on a screen for 8 hours, really easy to get distracted.
Yeah. Well, if you think about the grand scheme of things, like, in terms of human behavior and converting new behaviors into habits, and that we crave that predictability, we crave a level of certainty. It took us a year to get here. And I think in terms of the students that I've worked with as well, they're just getting it, and the year's ending. And so it's like, we just got the system down. We have our new routines. We're feeling a bit of maybe some level of confidence and predictability. Yeah. And then now we're going to start over with the return. And we've been hearing, we're going to be entering a second pandemic, and that's the mental health crisis.
Yes. And that's been here. Yeah, you must see it with your teen students looking for college. Tough time.
Yes.
You can't go on campus. So you don't get to see them. You don't get the real vibe and the feeling for it. It's, I think the kids are really had a rough time, and it's just not going to be quite as smooth going back to it as we would hope.
So we have you, Dana, and families, please get Dana on your team for really the guidance and the hand-holding. But if we could just say, what would be knowing that this is happening now, and that there's this new transitioning happening, right? We're entering summer and then this new shift. Is there at least one takeaway that we families can come away with in preparing our teens or young adults and even children?
One is, it's going to be okay. It's normal to feel how you feel. So validate your kids' feelings. Don't sort of say, oh, but this, and here's the silver lining, that we think that helps. And honestly, that doesn't help, because then they think they're not being listened to and you don't understand. And once you're a parent that doesn't understand, there's a lot of silence after that, right? Yeah. So you want them to keep talking to you. So validation. And then I would say, as much as you can, stick to some routine, even in the summer, especially in the summer, because it's very easy to get depressed and feel unfocused if you don't have something. And it doesn't have to be rigid, but these kids, especially if they have anxiety or ADHD, they do better with a routine and with expectations being met, Yeah. So I would say that. And then I guess the other thing I would really say, which I just talk about all the time, is self-advocacy. Teach them the life skills, teach them to speak up for themselves. Make sure their mindset is positive. Even if you have ADHD or anxiety, that's not all bad, right? So you hear all about the bad stuff, but the good stuff is people are super creative. They're really loyal. They're present. They are in the moment in a way that others are not able to do. There's a lot of good that comes in it. And if they don't understand that and know that, it's harder for them to make goals and feel confident and advocate for themselves, right?
For sure.
So it's a mindset shift as well.
Yeah, and I could see as we're entering those summer months, what a great platform to kind of rebuild.
Absolutely.
Now, and then you talk about routine a lot, but you also identified how routine can look so different. And this is where the parenting bias comes in. It can really mess things up. Like what we think has been right for us because it's worked doesn't necessarily mean we copy and paste for this other human being, right? No. So what's the strategy behind that?
I think with the kids, you I think it's really a matter of listening and hearing and knowing who they are. So, because if you can listen to them and who they think they are and what they think they need, that's really important. I mean, obviously, at 5 years old, you can't do that, right? So I'm talking about the older kids, but even those 5-year-olds know what they need and what they don't need, or what they want and what they don't want. And one of the greatest joys for me as a parent is that both of my kids, they know who they are and they are good with it. They don't give in to peer pressure. They want what they want. They're loving and kind, but they do stand up for themselves and they ask for help if they need it. And they do still talk to me.
Yes.
And all of that, I think, A, I'm lucky, and B, I think that's, if you could get a pattern going on who they really are and tap into that, let them tap into that.
Yes.
That's really important. And then plan out the summer together, right? You can plan a day together. Perhaps it's, you get up, and they obviously don't want to be scheduled all the time, but which is fair, right? They need their downtime after all of this work. So scheduling can just include downtime. It can include a trip to the park. It can include, trip to an arcade, right? Those types of things are fine. It's keeping them engaged and their mind going. And for kids with ADHD, what's really important is that they get a dopamine hit pretty often. And that is how their brain, that starts their brain working again. So if they've been kind of mellow for a bit and not using their brain or not engaged, they kind of need a dopamine hit, which is why one of the things I said about motivation. So kids who have ADHD are not motivated by the same thing. So if you try to take away their phone because they misbehaved, right? That doesn't actually work with them. What works for them is, is competition, joy, so something that brings them happiness, right? Novelty, something new, urgency, the sense of it's now or never type of thing. Those are what, so it's almost, and this sounds worse than I mean it, it's almost what's in it for them. So as a parent, if you can understand that and learn that, then how you ask them to do something is going to be very different, right?
That's right. Yeah.
You're not just going to say, load the dishwasher. You're going to say, hey, let's see if you can load the dishwasher in 5 minutes or less, whatever.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But you do, if you can shift to their brain, your relationship's going to be so much better, which means that they'll keep talking to you, which means they can, have a good summer with some scheduling, but with independence as well.
Yeah.
And that independence is hard and it's important.
Yeah, well, I can just imagine just the shift in, loading the dishwasher and the joy in like, okay, and you actually, maybe it's hearing the egg timer, right?
Yeah.
And then he's, he or she is loading that dishwasher and then he gets it done in 5 minutes and then there's a celebration, right? And there's that connection that and there's joy in doing chores. I mean, there's just so much more than just the outcome of, I just need these dishes in the dishwasher.
Yeah, or you didn't load the dishwasher, so give me your phone.
Yeah, right.
Not overly motivating for anybody. But.
Yeah, exactly. Just so helpful. And the other thing that it reminds me of, and this is last holiday break. I have to say the holiday break before the pandemic. And I did a survey to our seniors. So this is a very targeted group, but I asked, what do you wish for during your holiday break? What is it, the top 10 things that you wish for from your parents? And not one mentioned gifts or the gadgets that they want, but they said, please let me sleep in. Like, I don't have to wake up and keep my school schedule for you to prove to you that I'm motivated. Because I know parents want that evidence. And I think there's an integration between, yes, it should you can't sleep in till 3 p.m., but you can sleep in.
Right. There's no reason that they have to have it be a schedule that means get up early and clean your room and, read and things like that. It can be camp, or it can be let's go to the park for an ice cream cone, or just so that they're not sitting all day long doing nothing, because that's what brings their mood down, which they won't know because they'll think that's what makes them happy, but it doesn't generally.
Yeah.
I mean, they'd like to be challenged in some ways, right? Otherwise it's a little boring. So I would just say, yeah, plan things that they enjoy. And obviously, if there are things they need to do, or if you're worried that they are going to fall behind in the summer, because a lot of parents worry that their kids do fall behind by fall, right? Especially after a year like this. Yes. Then maybe you work in a way of them doing some writing or some reading that pertains, let's say, to a trip you're taking, right? So let's say you want to go away for a week somewhere, or camping, or with the family. Okay, well, have them research some places to go, right? They're reading, they're assessing, they're making choices and recommendations, but it's about a vacation. So they're bound to be more excited about that.
Yes. I'll read anytime for that.
I'll read anytime at all, but.
So this is, when it comes down to the core of it, it's as a parent, it's knowing, hey, is there something in your gut or into that's pulling the string? Is there something there, and that you want to reach out and get some clarity on that? Dana is the person. And then perhaps maybe it's, I do know that there's a diagnosis or not, it doesn't matter. So whatever, but now I'm entering summer months and I'm hearing this conversation with Dana and Sonja. I know that there has to be routine. I know that I might have parent bias, but I have no idea what that, like where the boundaries are. And to clean up the preferences and bias I have as a parent, they can also come to you for that help as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's and it really does help. And it's just a few little things. It doesn't have to be a huge time sink, and it doesn't have to be a huge presentation of everything to your kids. It's really just, even if you have a niggle, but also if your kid has a niggle, if your child feels something is off and wants to be tested or has some concerns. And I'll give you an example that you might not know. If your child has anxiety, right? I didn't know that anxiety could start so young, right? I just didn't think about it. But to have a toddler with anxiety just didn't occur to me. But some of the things that indicate that they could be are things like what if questions. So when they ask a lot of questions, which we love because it shows engagement and intellectual curiosity, but when they shift from a normal question to a what if question, what if this? What if you get hit by a truck? What if the cat doesn't come home? Those what if are a sign of, that could be a sign of anxiety.
Yeah.
If they're having problems going to sleep at night, it may not be a sleep issue at all. It could be separation anxiety. So those are things that I didn't know, and they were really helpful to me when I did figure that out, because that then you're clued in early, right? And you can help them along the way right away, and not wait and then be like, oh boy, what happened?
Right. Dana, I just feel like, as we plan out for summer, we should just take Dana with us.
Yeah, I'm a parent in a pocket.
Summer plans, check, done. Let's take Dana with us. Before we leave, and I want to make sure that our families know how to find you, but is there anything else that we didn't cover that you want to make sure our families know?
No, I think it's really help them with independence, help them develop resilience. Don't do everything for them, because you're not going to be there to do it later in life. Start teaching the life skills early. I mean, little kids can fold laundry, pair socks, that can be fun for them, right? So I think those types of things are really important as an overarching goal for all parents. All parents, but also especially with ADHD or anxiety, because some of those things are going to be more difficult.
Yes.
Right. It's just harder to have time management if you have ADHD. It's harder to remember to turn in your homework. It's harder to feel confident when, it has this kind of slight to it still somewhat. And anxiety, right? It's hard to do anything that is something you're fearful of. So looking someone in the eye, talking to an adult, talking to a doctor, right? When they go to college or to vocation store or wherever they go, all these things are going to be necessary. And the sooner you can start with that, or even have it in your mind even, the better it will be, and the less of a crunch you'll have later when things kind of blow up a little bit, because they don't necessarily have those skills and you haven't been able to give them that independence that they need.
Yeah.
Within, of course, your ability as a parent to give it, right?
For sure. I mean, and then the great thing is that's why we have parent coaches. It's just to help guide us.
Help with that. Yeah, absolutely.
And one more story before we leave, but it reminded me about 10 years ago, I was helping a brilliant, functioning senior student. She found her brilliance, ADHD, and then completed the application. Mom and daughter were in my office, and it was time to press submit. And the student struggled. That what if? I bet she didn't verbalize it.
Right.
She could not
push the button.
She asked me, can you press it for me? And I said, no. But so I wanted to stay there a while because I knew it was much more than just, but the mom went berserk. She couldn't understand, just press it. So there's a lot of conflict that happened. And then mom left the office. And that was one of those times where this is an 18-year-old. So, all of this time, and perhaps mom just didn't really understand what was going on, and a lot of conflict and personal bias of what's right.
Yeah, and what should be exciting and easy, but isn't necessarily.
And it came down to that one button. That was her stop. This is my stop, people. This is getting real. And
yeah.
And I'm thinking even as professionals to really be aware of what we're seeing and what we're observing and hearing the language.
Absolutely. Because, we all learn as we go too, right? We learn so much from the people that we talk to and the clients and the kids. And, as long as you keep that open mind, I think, that's a really important piece of it as a parent or as anything. But, an open mind to be able to hear and see other people's points of view and give it a minute to resonate before you respond. So don't just listen to respond, listen to hear.
Yes. Dana, thank you so much for taking time with us today. Where can our families find you so they can take you on their summer vacation?
My website is parentinginreallife.org. You can email me that there at dana@parentinginreallife.org. I do have a YouTube channel. I have Facebook, Parenting in Real Life, Instagram, Parent in Real Life. So all of those, I'm totally reachable. And I have a blog. So if you want to, all about parenting in general, as well as ADHD and anxiety. So, and that's free and you can just go read up. I think a lot of people find it helpful. At least that's the feedback I get sometimes.
Yeah. Excellent. And we're going to have all those links all in the description area. So it cannot be hard for our families to find you. But again, just thank you so much. It's just, to me, I just feel so relieved that there's an expert out there in the world helping us, particularly with this target group, but just all families as well. So
yeah, all families. Thank you so much, Sonja. This is awesome.